19,546 reports of unlawful deportation and forced transfer of children in the occupied areas of Ukraine by Russia. Let me say this again. People in Ukraine and organizations are claiming that Putin's Russia has separated over 19,000 Ukrainian children from their families, trying to turn them into Russians. How can you end this war unless every child is accounted for? The purpose of the hearing today is to make a record as to whether or not this claim is legitimate. I invited the Russian ambassador. There's his table. It's small, but that's the best we can do. He didn't show up. So this dispute needs to be defined and it needs to be resolved. Again, you cannot honorably end this conflict unless you account for every child taken by Putin's Russia from Ukraine, period. In terms of how this conflict ends, I think it's very important that Congress review what has been agreed to, that we have a say about is this a good deal or a bad deal, that if there are security guarantees, which there must be, that we'll review those guarantees and see if we can find bipartisan support to make them continuing past the Trump administration. Those are two things very important to me. Every child must be accounted for, and Congress needs to have a look at this deal if we can ever reach one. To the Trump administration, thank you for trying to end this bloodbath. All of us know we'll never get a perfect deal. There'll be sacrifices made. But one of the sacrifices we're not going to make is to give Russia 19,000 Ukrainian children. That's not a sacrifice I'm willing to make. I doubt if anybody up here is willing to make that sacrifice. This is not about land. This is about families. It's about the very fabric of society. How would you feel if it were one of your children? What would you want the world to do? I'd want the world to get my kid back. Is that asking too much? I don't think so. As to our Russian friends, they have 210 facilities people have identified, 39 sites where children go for direct military training, 130 sites that deal with their re-education, making them Russian. I'm not making this up. This is 2025, not 1945. This is going on in 2025, and it needs to stop.
I look forward to working with you in this committee.
Thank you, Congressman Fitzpatrick.
Thank the chair and the ranking member, and to all of our Senate colleagues for allowing Mike and I to come here today. No matter what path any of us have taken here, whether we're here in an elected capacity, the media, advocates, supporters, I think we can all agree on one thing, and that is none of us have any higher responsibility in any aspect of our lives than to take care of our kids. That is our single most important responsibility that we have as human beings. And as we sit here today, there are close to 20,000 Ukrainian children who are living in fear, living in uncertainty, that are relying on us, people who have a position of authority, to not forget them, and not just to not forget them, but to make sure we do everything in our power, everything in our capacity to bring them home to their families. And there's nothing accidental about Russia's abduction of these Ukrainian children. This is not a byproduct of war. It's a calculated decision by Vladimir Putin. It is state-directed, and it is one of the clearest perpetuations of terror that this war has seen. Since February of 2022, Ukrainian authorities, as was pointed out by Senator Graham, documented at a bare minimum 19,546 children. Every single one of those children have a name. Every single one of those children have dreams. They all have families that they love. And as we sit here today, they are living in fear. And they've been forcibly taken from their families, transported to Russian custody or Russian-occupied territories. These abductions are not random. They're not isolated. They are part of a deliberate effort that is specifically designed to do what Vladimir Putin has said he was going to do for years, to destroy Ukraine by erasing their culture and erasing their next generation of young Ukrainians. Silence in the face of such deliberate evil can never be an option for any of us. We have a responsibility and, more importantly, a moral obligation as human beings to make sure we take action here. And that begins with sending the following message to the Russian Federation. If you continue to kidnap Ukraine's children, and if you refuse to return every single last one of them home, you will bear the full weight of being recognized for what you have become, which is a state sponsor of terror. The bipartisan bill put forth by Senator Graham and several of his colleagues is a necessary first step, but it certainly cannot be the last. Congress can and must come together without further delay to sanction every single element of Vladimir Putin's regime. Every official, every institution, every entity complicit in Russia's assault against Ukraine must be held to account. And moreover, our adversaries must also be put on notice that if you enable the abduction of Ukraine's children or bankroll the slaughter of innocent Ukrainian civilians, the United States will hold you accountable. I want to thank Ukraine's ambassador to the United States for her partnership, for highlighting the urgency of this issue, of the staggering disregard in which Russia has for its human rights. And Mr. Chair, Mr. Ranking Member, we are reliving some of the most horrific parts of history, things that we thought were permanently relegated to the history books. When Germany invaded Poland September 1st of 1939, there were a lot of officials throughout the world that said it's a regional conflict. We don't want to provoke. We don't want to escalate. And what has history taught us? That a problem that could have been nipped in the bud early, because it was not, turned out to be the costliest and deadliest war in world history, where we had to send our own children to die on Omaha Beach. Those are the lessons of history. The decisions of Neville Chamberlain and the decisions of his successor, Winston Churchill, vastly different approaches that led to vastly different outcomes. And yet here we are today having that very same debate when history has already answered this question for us. When it comes to democracy, history will now record our decisions and our actions here today. So let's make sure that we make the next generation that's reading about our actions here today proud of the decisions we made. And that starts with standing up for every single last Ukrainian child that's been abducted, never letting them leave our mind for 1 second, and work tirelessly and insist that
our European allies to step up and to do the very same thing that we're doing today. But we are here today because America must do something. And you cannot be a great nation if you are unwilling to do good. And there is no doubt that these kids need us. They need us to raise our voice. I want to thank the First Lady for her tireless effort on this. Senator Graham, I want to thank you, Senator Blumenthal, Senator Klobuchar. Stand with you in bringing every one of these kids home and appreciate this. And I think we have a moral obligation to keep this going until we get every last one of them back into their parents' arms.
Well, thank you. Well said by all. We got 2 votes. We'll come back we'll try to vote at the beginning of the second vote, and our second panel, we'll hear from y'all just as soon as we get through voting. Thank you. We're in recess today.
every innocent soul back to their families, back to their lands. But only with all of these efforts, it was only a small fraction of these children who were able to come back homes. Each child's return is a miracle of diplomacy, coordination, and extraordinary courage from their parents who traveled through multiple countries, through the war zones, just to reclaim their sons and daughters back. But for every child who makes it home, many more remain missing, hidden and trapped in systems that are designed to keep them away from Ukraine and from the truth of what happened to them. As a mother, I cannot accept that any government would treat children as a trophies of war or bargaining chip in a geopolitical negotiations. Children are not assets to be moved on geopolitical chessboard. They are human beings with names, souls, families, memories, and rights. Their right to family life, identity, culture, their own language and country is protected not only by Ukraine, but by every international conventions that the whole democratic world has ever managed to accomplish. Russia launched the war of its aggression not only 4 years ago, but 11 years ago. It occupied part of our territories and decided it could claim our children as its own. As early as 2015, Russia was already taking Ukrainian children from occupied Crimea by train to Moscow. This was called a rescue or evacuation operation. These children were taught that they are not Ukrainians. They don't belong to anything they related them in their previous lives. Based on the massive amount of evidence and the cases presented to the court, on the July 9, 2025, the European Court of Human Rights confirmed that between 2014 and 2022, Russia abducted Ukrainian children and transferred them into unrelated Russian families. The court also established that indoctrination of children is a state policy of Russian Federation aimed at destroying Ukrainian identity. As an ambassador, I may say it straightforwardly. The forced transfer and deportation, including abduction of our children from occupied territories, is a grave breach of international law and can constitute a war crime. Bringing Ukrainian children back shall not be subjected to discussion. It is a central element of any discussion about peace and future relations of Russia, be it US or any country around the globe. As of November 2025, until now, Justice Ministry has officially confirmed 9,221 record, which is officially verified data of kids who are still abducted and being placed at the territory of Russian Federation. Cases of deportation and forced transfer of Ukrainian children are now around 20,000 records only calculated by Ukraine. But even according to official data presented by Russian Federation, the numbers are way higher. We still do not know a full picture of the occupied territories, but we also know that the physical abduction is no longer the only tool of the Russian aggression. Russia is reprogramming our children in place, in occupied schools, children's camps, social institutions, and even families under occupation. About 1,600,000 Ukrainian children are currently under Russian control in the occupied territories. Russia does not give them a chance. There's no escape route. The kids are forced to obey the ideology. So at this point, we know that there are at least 210 sites which are known as the indoctrination places across the occupied territories. We mobilized the efforts under the leadership of President Zelensky, who united international players and domestic players on the umbrella of the initiative Bring Kids Back, which we're doing everything to locate our children back. We created national programs dedicated to this issue, and we are cooperating with international partners. But we cannot succeed alone. These children are scattered across the vast territory. We need to make our voices heard, and we are grateful to helping us. Based on the information provided above, it is our duty to reach out to respectful members of Senate with the next elements. It is our position that we require the unconditional return of all the children within the peace process. We also ask you to keep this issue on top of the international agenda to the extent it is possible. And we also think that the information you heard from the respective colleagues of yours, but also you will hear from the testimonies provided by Ukrainian side, leaves no doubt that Russia is a sponsor of terrorism, a sponsor of evil, and a sponsor of sin. Passing the respective legislative initiative by Senate will leave no room for Russia to bypass the obligation for the unconditional return of all Ukrainian children. Thank you for this attention.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the head of Bring Kids Back. You can state your name for the record, please.
It's Maxim Maximov.
Thank you.
Honorable Chairman, Ranking Member, Senators, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. When speaking about the abduction and identity erasure of Ukrainian children, I feel deep responsibility because nothing in the Russia's war reveals its intent more clearly than what it does to Ukrainian children. I appear on behalf of the Bring Kids Back UA initiative launched by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. It unites the efforts of the government agencies, civil society organizations, and international partners to trace, return, and reintegrate Ukrainian children stolen by Russia. As a coordinating platform, we have a comprehensive understanding of what Ukrainian children endure under Russian control, both in territories it occupies and in Russia itself. The actions of the Russian Federation toward Ukrainian children are not isolated incidents or humanitarian decisions gone wrong. They are a part of a deliberate strategy, a state policy of demographic engineering and identity erasure. Child abductions and industrial-scale re-education are weaponized to reshape entire communities and redirect children's loyalty, pushing a generation away from home. And critically, today, many children do not need to be taken across border to have their identities erased. In occupied towns and villages, Ukrainian language, history, and culture are removed from schools, and children are taught a worldview that tears them off from Ukraine. And Russia executes this strategy methodically. First, children are isolated. Family, teachers, and friends are cut off, leaving a child disoriented and without familiar support structures. Then, Russia dismantles the identity. Being Ukrainian becomes something to hide. New documents, new guardians, and at 14, an imposed Russian citizenship, all designed to sever the legal and emotional path back. Over time, this pressure reshapes a child's sense of who they are and where they belong. Finally, when identity is weakened, militarization begins. Children enter state-run programs where they train with drones, practice assault drills, and absorb wartime ideology. By 18, that imposed citizenship becomes the basis for conscription, to send them to fight the country they were taken from. This is the arc of Russia's design: isolate, reprogram, deploy. A 16-year-old Veronika once told me that she was punished for speaking Ukrainian and that she was repeatedly told that her mother has abandoned her and was not coming for her. A lie meant to break her connection to home. And this is exactly why Bring Kids Back UA exists. Not only to bring the kids back, but to reverse what Russia tried to do and keep children from being lost twice, first to Russia and then to trauma. Senators, in the beginning of my statement, I said that nothing expresses the nature of Russia's war against Ukraine better or more clearly than what it does to our children. Because if these were humanitarian evacuations, then why did Russia build a network of political re-education camps? And if this war is about NATO expansion, then why is Russia rewriting the identity of 2-year-olds, unless it needs new children to fight its future wars? A state that does this to children will not change course on its own. It has to be confronted directly, and it comes down to 3 things. First, sustained pressure on Russia to disclose every child it holds: names, locations, legal status. Without full transparency, individual children disappear in a system that is designed to hide them. Second, an insistence on the unconditional return of these kids. No political trade-offs, no linkage to territory or nuclear power plants. Any conditionality would legitimize the crime and invite repetition. And third, continued U.S. support for Ukraine's efforts under the Bring-Us-Back-UA framework, tracing, returns, reintegration, and accountability. These are the steps that would dismantle the system Russia built and bring our children back home as themselves. There can be no durable peace while Ukrainian children remain missing, reprogrammed, or trapped inside Russia's administrative system. Senators, through coordinated efforts under the Bring-Us-Back-UA initiative, 1,859 children have been returned back to Ukraine. Your leadership and your pressure directly determines how many more will come home. Thank you for your support, and thank you for standing with us in this fight. Thank you.
Senator Murray, would you like to say anything, or?
I'll wait till my turn.
Okay. Gentleman from Save Ukraine.
Mikola Kuleba. Chairman Graham, Ranking Member Schatz, and esteemed committee members, thank you for the opportunity to come before you, not only the founder of Save Ukraine, but the father and the witness of the grievous crime of our century, this systematic abduction, trafficking, and militarization of Ukraine's children by the Russian Federation. Through our Save Ukraine Underground Railroad, built with coordination of Bring Us Back initiative, President Zelensky, we rescued more than 1,000 children from Russia and occupied territories. And let me speak on their behalf. I give testimony in this historic moment of urgency, not experienced in generations, but with the same goal as Stalin's Holodomor to erase Ukraine. Not just by bombs, but by stealing our innocent children. Our children continue to suffer a biblical plague conducted by a modern pharaoh. I plead with you from the bottom of my heart to require Russia to let our children go. Many of you are grandparents. Imagine your grandchild walking into school and being told, you may not longer speak English, only Russian. Your American name is forbidden. From today, you will raise a Russian flag, swear loyalty to Russia and Putin, and study from the books that say the United States never existed. Imagine their favorite English books thrown into a fire, soldiers entering classroom with fires, with rifles, teachers warning to speak English is extremism. And imagine your grandchild being sent to a summer camp where they crawl under barbed wire, throw grenades, and are taught that you, their own family, are the enemy. And they are stripped of their identity, language, faith, and family. This is a deliberate strategy to erase Ukraine's future. And more than 1.6 million Ukrainian children are now imprisoned behind Russia's new Iron Curtain in Ukraine. And they are indoctrinated to believe that the US and NATO are the true enemies. Save Ukraine provides a full spectrum of services to children in need. We conduct dozens of dangerous rescue missions inside Russia and the occupied territories. Across thousands of miles through the Underground Railroad, we provide holistic medical and trauma recovery and safe reintegration of children and families into new communities after their rescue. Save Ukraine has documented testimonies of each of the 1,062 rescued children. It is abundantly clear that Russia's efforts are designed to hurt and destroy entire families. Punishment for resistance is severe. And today, streets in occupied territories are filled with Russian soldiers and parents terrified to let their children go outside because the military presence is everywhere. Girls report harassment and intimidation by Russian soldiers. Homes are raided at any hour of the day and night. Children must keep their phones clean at all times, deleting messages, photos, anything that could reveal their Ukrainian identity, because single image or conversation can lead to brutal consequences. Military training is compulsory. Rescued boys and girls describe being taught to throw grenades, crawl through trenches, assemble and disassemble Kalashnikovs, and storm mock buildings. During one so-called psychological test, a Russian officer asked a boy, "How do you feel about killing? Are you ready?" When the boy refused to answer, the soldiers threatened him, "We will take you first. You will serve on submarine." A teenager mother was told during excruciating childbirth that she would only receive a necessary C-section that would save her life if she accepted a Russian passport. She reluctantly agreed. Then she was told that the only way that she could take the baby home was if she was listed as Russian on his birth certificate. One boy told us that the hardest thing was for him wasn't being taken. It was watching his friend die. Russian forces found a message from a Ukrainian soldier on his friend's phone. They ripped out his teeth and eyelids. They cut off his fingers. He did not survive the torture. Later, a news report said that he died of the blood clot. But truth is that they killed him. And the longer Russia wages war against Ukraine and the West, the more sophisticated their effort become to entrap Ukrainian children. As children begin reaching the age of military conscription, more will attempt escape. We are very grateful for this committee's recognition of the urgency to rescue our children. We ask that your effort include forcing Russia to identify all stolen Ukrainian children, as well as ensuring their release to their families in Ukraine. We urge you to support our efforts to rescue many more children and heal their trauma. Thank you for your moral leadership and for continuing to stand with the children of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. Katrina?
And sorry, you can find this book near you. And this is stories of 50 rescued kids from the more than 200 through the support of Jewish Federation of North America. Thank you.
Chairman Graham, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. If we wish to achieve a lasting peace, we must begin with the children. In March, His Excellency Mike Waltz said that the return of Ukrainian abducted children would serve as a confidence-building measure before peace negotiations. Since that moment, the Russian Federation authorities told that they have repatriated only 20 Ukrainian children. The rest remain under Russian control in institutions or foster families. This concerns at least 780 Ukrainian children mentioned by Russia earlier. Yet, in her latest annual report, Russian ombudsperson Tatyana Moskalkova claims 730,000 Ukrainian children in Russia. Russia insists it evacuated Ukrainian kids. Let me show you a few photos. These are Katya and Ira, sisters abducted from occupied Crimean Peninsula in 2015 and sent to the Republic of Adygea. I have been following their fate for 11 years and know that these kids are raised as Russian citizens in the foster family of the enemy state. Can they or other 1,000 children abducted from Crimea be considered evacuated under international humanitarian law? What about thousands more who after 2022 ended up in 57 Russian regions under similar circumstances? IHL clearly regulates evacuation of children. It requires Russia to take all feasible steps to reunite families. Russia must submit a list of evacuated children to the ICRC. Given the exceptional nature of evacuation, Russia must regularly assess the grounds for keeping children and return them immediately once the necessity ends. Russia has fulfilled none of these obligations. No list, no assessment, no voluntary repatriation. Instead, abduction, Russification, forcible passportization, and adoption. This fact led the European Court of Human Rights recognized Russia in violation of its international obligations. It is also important to note that the presidential order number 986, signed by Putin for the so-called family reunification, so repatriation of Ukrainian children, was issued only on 16 May 2023, so 2 months after ICC arrest warrants against him and Maria Lvova-Belova for war crimes. The text of this order remains unpublished. The composition, methods, and results of the specifically established intergovernmental commission are unknown. Statements by Sergei Lavrov claiming that all Ukrainian children in Russia are known, their names and whereabouts are not hidden, are false. Otherwise, we would be aware of it. My organization documented 165 re-education camps where Ukrainian children are militarized and Russified. These camps exist in occupied territories, in Russia, in Belarus, and in North Korea. In this photo, you can see 12-year-old Misha from the occupied Donetsk region. And in this one, 16-year-old Lisa from occupied Simferopol. They were sent to the Sondovon camp in the North Korea, 9,000 kilometers from home. In this camp, children were taught to destroy Japanese militaries and met Korean veterans who in 1968 attacked the United States ship Pueblo, killing and wounding 9 American soldiers. Russification and militarization cause severe trauma and violate children's dignity. At 17, boys received draft notices into the Russian army. The ultimate goal is clear and quite genocidal: to make Ukrainians kill each other. In September 2025, the United Nations Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights recognized these actions as forced cultural assimilation. Children who resist Russification are labeled terrorists and extremists and sent to psychiatric institutions for forced medical treatment. Distinguished members of the subcommittee, I am grateful for your every initiative countering the abduction and Russification of Ukrainian children, including sanctions, and also support for the accountability efforts. Recently, in Nigeria, Boko Haram abducted 300 girls and boys. Like Russia and North Korea, terrorists watch to see how determined world leaders will be in reuniting children with their families, holding perpetrators accountable, and preventing future abuses not only in Ukraine, but in the other part of our world. That is why amnesty for war criminals is not an option for us. That is why Russia must immediately and unconditionally return all abducted Ukrainian children via international and independent mechanism. That is why we cannot recognize occupied territories as Russian, neither de jure nor de facto, as it would undermine international legal order, peace and security, making us complicit in these crimes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Raymond.
I want to start with my heartfelt thanks to you, Chairman Graham, you, Ranking Member Schatz, and to all the people who made this pivotal hearing possible today. My name's Nathaniel Raymond. I've been a war crimes investigator for over 25 years, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Humanitarian Research Lab at the Yale School of Public Health. I'm testifying on my own behalf, not on behalf of Yale, and definitely not on behalf of Harvard. That was a joke. And the views expressed are my own. What I want to do today is two things. I want to tell the story of how U.S. assistance has been essential in this case, and I want to give you facts about what we found at the Humanitarian Research Lab over our 3.5 years of investigation. We were called in the summer of 2022 as part of a State Department program called the Conflict Observatory. We were given the mission to investigate reports that Russia was systematically taking kids from territory they were occupying following the full-scale invasion. Frankly, I initially didn't think we could complete the request, But we had a break in the case, which was that mayors and local officials inside Russia were taking selfies with the kids, and they left their location settings public. Whoops. Based on that breakthrough, we were able to combine together very high resolution satellite imagery and open source intelligence methods to assess that at least 6,000 children as of the start of 2023 had been temporarily or permanently taken to so-called patriotic re-education camps inside the temporary occupied territories in Russia itself. Just to give you the sense here, these facilities stretch from the Black Sea all the way to the Eastern Pacific, across Siberia, closer to Japan and Alaska in some cases than they are to Kyiv or Moscow. In 2023, building on that number, the International Criminal Court, with assistance from us through the Graham Amendment, helped indict President Putin and issue an arrest warrant for him and Maria Lvova-Belova. We believe that the actual number of children that Russia has taken in our internal estimate is closer to 35,000. You've heard the 19,500 number from our Ukrainian colleagues. We think that is actually low. That number is made up of 4 distinct groups that are spread out across Russian families and homes, but also 210 facilities. Those groups are kids in the camps, kids who have been taken from the battlefield after their parents have been killed in bombardment, kids who were taken from filtration camps when their parents were sent for interrogation after the fall of Mariupol. And the 4th group that I want to go in depth quickly on here are kids from institutions that have been basically hidden in plain sight on Russian adoption websites and in Russian databases as if they were Russian orphans. We've identified at least 314 children that have been unlawfully placed with Russian families. We presented this information to the Security Council in December 2024. The breakthrough in that case came from one of our analysts noticing wallpaper, of all things. A humanitarian research lab analyst had seen basically a child in a photograph standing in front of teal and yellow wallpaper posted of a supposed Russian orphan. Going back, that analyst had seen the wallpaper before in a news story about a group of children from Ukraine taken to Russia that showed an identical backdrop. The analysts on our team deduced that Russia was hiding these children in front of us. Checking other photos, we found a pattern. That pattern led to understanding the abduction of these and other children, some of whom, based on satellite imagery, were transported from Ukraine on one of President Putin's own planes and held in Russian facilities until they were legally placed for adoption, led to a truly chilling realization. Half of the children we identified were placed in these databases with their siblings. With the limited time I have left, I want to say our funding has been terminated at Humanitarian Research Lab by the State Department, and we are running out of gas and running out of road. We've got about 4 to 6 weeks left. And I want to say to all of you, on behalf of our team, it has been the honor of a lifetime to serve in this mission, regardless of whether we get to continue doing it. Thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you. We'll have 5-minute rounds, and thank you all. Very, very compelling testimony. Ms. Raymond will try to keep you up and running here. So just to understand what we're talking about, you're confident that Russia has put up for adoption Ukrainian children being masqueraded as Russian children?
High confidence.
High confidence.
Highest confidence of intelligence assessment.
Okay. These camps you talk about run the breadth of Russian territory. How many are there?
Our initial estimate was 110, and that was wrong. It turned out to be 210, approximately. We found more since then, but 210 is our current high confidence assessment, sir.
Very briefly, what is the purpose of these camps?
3 purposes: to indoctrinate, militarize, and to isolate.
And all of these children going to these camps are Ukrainian, is that correct?
That is not correct. There are 3 groups of camps: those that are Ukrainian only,
okay,
those that are mixed camps, and it really differs by age group. And the third are those that are specifically military training camps that sometimes are Ukrainian only and sometimes mixed.
Okay. In your estimate, there could be up to 35,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped by Russia, for lack of a better term.
That's our internal estimate right now. We are working to validate, sir.
Okay. To save Ukraine, how many children have you reunited with their Ukrainian families?
More than 1,000 children have been searched and returned to their relatives in Ukraine.
Okay, and we won't go into great detail, but you're able to do that because of when one child is returned, they can give you information about other children. Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah, through our rescue missions, we provide and we bring in them to our rehabilitation program, and we after rehabilitation. And trauma therapy, children witnessing and telling us information about that kids who stay.
Which leads you to more children, right?
Yeah, and in military camps, military academies, in their villages.
I got you. So this underground railroad you described, is that fairly dangerous work?
Oh, it's very dangerous. I can't tell you a lot, maybe privately, but it's possible only because we are not telling a lot about it.
Yeah.
And we have our specific.
Okay. Got you. God bless you. Madam Ambassador, appreciate you being here. Make sure I understand, whatever negotiations are going on about territory and the size of the Ukrainian military, NATO, no NATO, the children is the policy or the position of the Ukrainian government. This is non-negotiable. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, you're correct. All children who have been abducted are subjected to unconditional return under the jurisdiction of Ukraine.
Okay. Do you have any dialogue with the Russian Federation regarding the identity of these children or any plan to repatriate them?
At this point, you have seen that there has been a discussion in Geneva and last week in Florida, and these discussions build around a specific plan of actions, which includes the return of Ukrainian children. However, the discussion is still continued.
Okay, but is it part of the negotiated process?
Well, at this point, we have created a number of international mechanisms which allowed the return of Ukrainian children, but the numbers are really small. Some of the instruments were used also to make sure that the First Lady of the United States is able to make some announcements. These are the instruments was used with our partners, but also mostly the return of the children is done through initiatives like Mykolas, but also under the leadership of the Bring Kids Back initiative.
Okay, has Russia admitted to having these children in any significant numbers?
We believe that over the one of the meetings in Istanbul, when Ukraine presented a number of 300 kids for the beginning of the dialogue, Russia denied the very fact that there is such things as abducted kids. But we believe that the very fact that we hear the announcement of the return of Ukrainian kids with the support of the Russia is a testimony of the very fact that this crime have been committed.
How many children have been returned working with Russia?
At this point, we can only judge by formal numbers we know from the initiatives and testimonies you have, but if you don't mind, I will leave it to Maxim, who have the exact numbers collected.
And the reason I ask it, I understand the Underground Railroad. I'm trying to figure out, is Russia cooperating at all in terms of defining the scope of the problem and helping return the children? So thank you all very much. Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to all of the testifiers. I'll start with Mr. Raymond. Can you walk us through what happened in terms of the contract termination, sort of when you were informed, how it got reversed, and then specifically what happened to the data file and how you sort of saved it?
On February 27th, we were informed that an exemption request by the now defunct Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operations to preserve us as essential was denied. And that day, we lost access to our database. That database had 13 large case files, which had contributed to the 4 indictments by the ICC against Russian High Command on attacks on civilian power generation infrastructure, as well as the kids files. The kids' files included for each kid 30 to 40 page dossiers. We couldn't access it that morning. For several days, the State Department and our team and our prime implementer that we reported to were trying to find the location of these case files, which also included direct support to the Office of the Prosecutor General on specific homicides which were not made public, performed with Department of Justice support. So we were trying to find, basically the joke was, dude, where's my data? The situation is that there had been no plan for the preservation of the database.
Do you have the data now?
We do. And we were able, in our reinstatement, to transfer that data finally to Europol and to the Ukrainian government.
What's the annual amount that you receive from the federal government under normal circumstances?
It varied, but it was approximately 4 to 5 million to our team directly.
Okay. And you're saying that the status of your contract renewal is still in question?
No, we have been formally terminated as of June. We are no longer a implementer for the U.S. State Department.
Who is going to do that work?
I do not know, sir.
Do you believe that the State Department has a plan and is not telling you, or do you believe that they don't have a plan?
We met with our colleagues today at State Department and had a very good discussion, but I'm not privy to their plan.
Of the 4 categories of abducted children, are you able to break it down by percentage? Who's in an institution? Who is with a Russian family? Do you know, or are you at this point still guessing?
I'm going to try to keep this as not wonky as possible. For 2 of the groups, we have both like a fraction, a numerator and denominator, a number we've seen and a number we think exists. But for 2 of the groups, we don't have a denominator, meaning simply we don't know how many there could be. For the battlefield kids and for the kids in filtration, we don't know what that total data set could be. For the institution kids and for the kids in camps, we are beginning to get to a denominator, but we don't have a percentage yet, sir.
Give me obviously you don't have fidelity. No one has fidelity. That's what this work is all about. I get that. I'm just trying to get a sense for, are most of the kids in institutions, or most of the kids not? Give me a sense for, of these 35,000 kids, how many of them are in camps or institutions versus families or elsewhere?
So I'll go from biggest set. We know we can order them 1, 2, 3, 4. The majority of the kids have been either indefinitely or temporarily in the camps. That's the plurality. Second group would be the institution kids. The third group is likely the battlefield kids, and 4th is filtration. But on 3rd and 4th, I could be wrong on that.
Mr. Raymond, as it relates to the continuation of the work, whether it's your organization or some other organization or the State Department itself, could you please correspond with the committee on a relatively regular basis, with the permission of the chairman, on the status of those negotiations? Senator Rubio, Secretary Rubio, has conveyed to us multiple times that this remains a priority, but where the rubber hits the road, sometimes we have hit a number of tremendous challenges, and so sometimes we worry that even the secretary is not tracking, that some of these things are either happening or not happening under his nose, and so we'd like to serve as a convener and a communicator so that we don't miss a beat, and that preferably the people who are doing this excellent work just simply are able to continue to do it.
Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am really glad that this hearing is being held to help shine a light on one of the darkest aspects of Russia's bloody and unjustified war in Ukraine. Thousands of Ukrainian children that you've talked about have been kidnapped by Russia since this terrible war began. They've been abducted from their homes. They've been ripped out of their parents' arms. They've been sent, as we heard, to forced re-education programs, military training camps, and worse. The horror of this sort of crime is really hard to fathom, and that is why it resulted in Putin being charged for war crimes by the International Criminal Court, and it is the height of barbarity. So I really appreciate all of the witnesses today joining us and sharing your very powerful testimony and talking about the steps that we can take to secure justice for this ongoing atrocity and provide healing for the victims and survivors. Unfortunately, we simply cannot have this conversation without talking about the fact that, as Ranking Member Schatz just mentioned, earlier this year the Trump administration abruptly cut off funding to help track the victims of Russian kidnapping and deliver justice. And as noted already, that data was almost all lost and delayed in being sent to the proper authorities. That was absolutely senseless. And today there is still no ongoing U.S. funding for this specific work. Now, I wish that we had the Trump administration officials here with us today to explain why that program was terminated and to talk about efforts in this space moving forward. I understand, Mr. Chairman, they were invited, but they're not here today, and that really is inexplicable to me. We have also seen the Trump administration put forward drafts of so-called peace plans that read more like Russian wish lists than a serious plan. We really need better from this administration. We all need to stand firm by our allies in Ukraine, and we need to stand firm for basic principles like accountability and justice, especially for something as fundamentally immoral as kidnapping children, which is why it is critical that we push back against careless cuts like the one I just talked about. We need to reverse course. We need to restore the bipartisan tradition of support for investments that uphold our values and support our allies and strengthen our leadership. And if we want a peace deal to end this war, we have to make sure that Putin understands our resolve to stand by our allies will not waver. War crimes cannot be swept under the rug, and he can't get a better deal by walking away from the table and waiting us out. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased that we're having this hearing today, and to be here with so many others who are sending the message in a bipartisan way with our voices. And I hope we can send the same message with our laws, as well as by writing a very strong SFOPS bill that restores funding to help identify, track, and return victims of kidnapping, and restores the support to so many other worthy NGOs that have a long history of good work and bipartisan support, and that maintains robust support to Ukraine at this very critical moment. With that, Mr. Kuleba, wanted to ask you, can you talk a little bit more about the work you do to return Ukraine children to their families and how governmental funding and coordination helps expand your ability to do so?
Thank you so much, Senator. And we built our system beginning from the investigators team who are searching these kids. And then, as I mentioned before, after rescue these kids, we provide rehabilitation, and we can find more information about that kids who stayed in occupied territories. And very often, these kids whose parents were killed or arrested or disappeared, and we have a little limit of time just to extract them from that territory. And we built a holistic system for their research, so their search, rescue, rehabilitation, and reintegration. And we have rehabilitation centers when more than 800 beds in our centers and 6 months rehabilitation program for both for families and children after reunification and for unaccompanied minors and orphans, because many children who've been rescued have draft notice for the Russian army. It's a huge risk. And we have kids who've been rescued from Russian foster families, from Russian military academies, even from the Russian army. And they are witnessing about war crimes, and they testimony how they've been forcibly taken to the Russian army. And it is thousands of Ukrainian children who are in such risk, and many of them who were taken, forcibly conscripted, and now fighting with us. And that's why it's so important for us to find these kids and rescue them in time. And just last statistics, every 6 captured soldiers who are in our prisons from occupied territories, the young adults who've been Ukrainian children, who've been brainwashed and who've been forcibly conscripted. And they have to fight, they must fight, because if not, they will be jailed or just killed.
I can't even imagine. I mean, what you said in time is really critical, because if you take the pictures you had of 2-year-olds and then 11 years later, that's been their life. They don't remember much else, and rehabilitation must be extremely difficult. So in time is critically important, and why funding, Mr. Chairman, is so important as well. I am out of time, but I did want to ask Mr. Maxiamov, what is the single greatest obstacle that the United States faces in trying to compel Russia to return these abducted children?
Thank you for the excellent question. The reality is that for the Russians to return the kids, it is the same as testifying into committing a crime. Every single child returned has been a victim of a war crime. Mm-hmm. They can tell what happened to them. They can tell the law enforcement authorities what happened to the peers of theirs, what happened to their friends, what happened to their family members, what happened in towns they were born from. So that is very counter-instinctive for them to return the witnesses who would testify against them. And another huge obstacle that I think would any effort, any mediated or negotiated effort endure or face is they systematically try to downplay the crime. Despite hundreds and hundreds of names that have been submitted by Ukraine through different channels, from State of Qatar to the Vatican to Istanbulis, there were many of them, various attempts. There have never been a return of 20 kids even. The biggest number, I guess, it was around a dozen, while they have thousands of names. So I think those two things, it goes against the very logic for them to release the witnesses to their crime, and also they would be trying to do everything they can to downplay the scale.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Senator Sheen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Schatz for holding this critical hearing, and thank you to all of our witnesses for your very important testimony. It's very clear that Vladimir Putin is trying to wipe Ukraine, its culture, and its history off the map. Senator Graham, I hope the Senate moves very quickly to pass your legislation, the Russia State Sponsor of Terrorism Bill, which would address this issue of children who have been kidnapped, and it's now time for Congress to act on that. Ambassador, there have been reports that the United States is considering de facto recognizing Russian control over occupied Ukrainian territories. I hope these reports are not correct, because I think this would invite further Russian aggression. But can you talk about what the consequences of that kind of recognition would mean for the Ukrainian children that we're talking about?
Thank you, Senator, for this question. Indeed, it's not a secret that there was a 28 points plan which was put on the table for the discussion, which eventually evolved into 90 points plan after Geneva, and have been further discussed in Florida last weekend and have been discussed in Moscow by Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy President Trump to President Putin. So at this point, it is clear and a official understanding that whatever is discussion about the territory is not, anything is not yet decided. But even if we're speaking about a ceasefire or stopping on the existing line, this is also a condition that every person, whether it's a child or a grown-up on the occupied territory, have to have the right to leave the occupied territory and reunite back with their family, with their country. And this is not something that is being under discussion or under negotiations. Whatever the settlement will be, even if it's just a ceasefire, at this point, being in occupation, it's also being in captivity, where people have no choice whether they stay in the occupation or flee to Russia. So Ukraine has the right to accept every Ukrainian from the occupied territory or deoccupy it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Raymond, this question is best for you, but why is accountability for war crimes, or perhaps Mrs. Rashevska, why is the accountability for war crimes and the release of all people unjustly held so important for peace to be just and lasting?
Thank you for this excellent question. I will start and maybe Nathaniel will add something. As a lawyer, I can tell that there is no fair and just peace without accountability processes for those who committed for crimes and crimes against humanity. It is needed not only for Ukrainian children and for Ukraine as a state. It is also needed for the international community to maintain the existing legal order and to avoid the repetition of all these atrocities in some other parts of our world. And also it should be noted that it also needed for Russians to avoid this resentment and to avoid the renewal of all these crimes and of all these atrocities in future in Ukraine or in some other parts of Europe. We see that Russians are militarizing children. Russians are preparing them to launch the new war of aggression. And that is why without accountability for them, we just can't stop all these processes. We cannot tell to the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC to stop investigation. It is impossible under the Rome Statute. It is also impossible to stop the process of creation of the special tribunal for the aggression against Ukraine. It was already launched. And that is why I hope that in the near future, we will see the victory of justice.
Well, thank you. I was struck by the number of people on the first panel who mentioned the history of Europe and what happened with Germany and Adolf Hitler and the repetition that we're seeing now of those kinds of events. Mr. Raymond, did you want to add anything?
Yes, Senator Shaheen, the issue here is unique, specific to children. Underneath the Geneva Convention, there is something called the Special Protected Status, and it means children cannot be treated as hostages, spies, or POWs. So this is not just about Ukraine, it's about the future of all children in the wars of today and tomorrow. If we give the green light as the United States to treating kids like they're POWs or hostages, that special protected status is gone, and it's catastrophic.
Well, thank you both. I would like to just ask one more very brief question, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman, because Freedom House has documented that the Lukashenko regime in Belarus is complicit in the kidnapping of Ukrainian children. Can anyone speak to what we know about the scope of Lukashenko regime's involvement?
I would like to answer this question because my organization, Regional Center for Human Rights, cooperated with Freedom House. So for me, it is an honor to testify on behalf of both of our organizations. So as for the role of Lukashenko regime and the displacement of Ukrainian children to Belarus, since 2021 till 2024, we have documented 2,219 Ukrainian children who were displaced to 18 camps and other facilities in Belarus. But what is the fact? After our hearings last year in the United States Helsinki Commission, after all these sanctions imposed by those who organized these trips and re-education processes in Belarus, we see only 150 Ukrainian children in Belarus this year. It means that it had a frozen effect, at least. And one great example, it is about mayor of Novopolotsk. He was put under sanctions, and now there are no Ukrainian children in Novopolotsk.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Senator Graham. First, Mr. Raymond, thank you for the great work that you and your colleagues do. We're very proud to have you doing that work in New Haven, Connecticut. Appreciate you being here and telling us a harrowing but important story. I wanted to build on some of Senator Shaheen's questions. And Madam Ambassador, I appreciate you taking head on these discussions that are happening around a so-called peace plan. Frankly, as you know, many Republicans and Democrats in the Senate were caught off guard by a plan that looks to sell out Ukraine's interests in the name of a illusory peace that would only be for the short term. I maybe want to ask you a little bit more directly a version of the question that Senator Shaheen asked. Part of the draft plan would require Ukraine to give up territory that it now controls areas that are not under Russian control right now. Does your government think that this would be fair for Ukraine to hand territory to Russia that Russia does not currently control?
Thank you, Senator, for this question. I'll try to be as precise as I can, to the extent I can, given that there is a very intensive phase of negotiating, and we fully submit to the tactics the President of the United States and his team is tackling to narrow the discussion and to mediate. So at this point, nothing in the plan, which have been discussed in Florida or in Geneva, which evolved in a 19-point plan, speaks about, has the word concession, swap, giving the territories to Russia. So what the discussion is about, all the other points, and as you know, following the statement also of the Russian president yesterday, this is not the issue which has been discussed over to find a solution. So these discussions are ongoing. Speaking about whether it's fair, of course it's not fair. This is not something that you can call justice. This is not something you can call complete. And we were able to withstand the largest military power only with Ukrainian army, and with the support of the United States and the whole world, the moral support, the financial support, and the military support. But it's only because we were able and we were backed up with our face, we were able to withstand. This is not going anywhere, and this is the basis on which Ukraine negotiates. But we are confident that we should give a chance to every effort which could lead to lessen the atrocities which are faced by Ukrainian people every night.
Well, it would be a moral abomination for Russia to end up with any Ukrainian territory. Even worse, that there are discussions underway that would involve Ukraine giving away territory that Russia does not have any military control over today. I appreciate your strong statement. Here's a really simple question for you. Has Ukraine committed war crimes? Madam Ambassador, has Ukraine committed war crimes?
Well, first and foremost,
I hope it's an easy answer.
Yeah, so I think one thing which I can guarantee for 100% that Ukraine had 100% access from all international monitors and organizations from every part of the world, be it across the aisle, be it from European Union, OSCE, or International Red Cross. We have granted the access to prisoners of war from the minute one. We have got them. We have granted the access to every facilities and every part of the territory, including the territory of Kursk region, which was occupied. The first thing after military operation was concluded, international monitors were granted access to that. So we have nothing to hide. We have been given access to every monitor who can do the fact check.
Has Russia committed war crimes?
I think it's not a court, we're not a judges, or we don't have a jury here, but this is the most documented war. And I've seen it with my own eyes when I came to Bucha, the bodies of those people who were buried in graves. And I talked to a priest who said that he were not allowed by Russian army to collect the bodies, and he had to go overnight to collect these bodies and bury them in a massive grave just behind his church. This is something you cannot unsee, unhear, or unknow. The justice has no time limits, and the justice is not limited to ending the war.
And of course, the topic of today's discussion is in and of itself a war crime, one of many that Vladimir Putin and Russian forces have committed. And yet this peace plan envisions a joint amnesty for war crimes, both for Russia and for Ukraine, which of course would end up being a get-out-of-jail-free card for Vladimir Putin, who has committed these crimes at a dizzying rate, including the separation and abduction of children. And so let me just finish by asking, just for yes or no answers from the other four panelists, do you believe it would be a good idea for any peace plan to involve giving Vladimir Putin or the Russian government immunity from the war crimes that they have committed? Just yes or no, because I've run out of time.
I have already expressed my idea. No, not at all. It doesn't correspond to the existing practice. No amnesty for war criminals during international armed conflicts. That's all.
No.
No, and it's not in the plan.
My answer is the former commissioner, presidential commissioner who participated in Minsk negotiation. I know what does it mean negotiate with Russians. It's no outcomes, but with the support, strong support of USA, we believe that it could be possible. We need your support and actions.
Niet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's all of our members. We'll wrap it up. Thank you all very much for coming. The purpose of the hearing was to focus on the children. I think most everybody understands the pain associated with losing a child to an occupying force. And we're trying to make sure that ever how this war ends, that the children are brought back to their families. That's the number one goal of the hearing. As to how this war ends, I don't think any plan is going to be forced on Ukraine. I hope you will be able to talk with our folks, and I think you have, and talk with the Russians, and we'll see if we can bring this war to an end. If you believe Ukraine's going to evict every Russian soldier, you're living in a world that doesn't exist. If you believe that Russia's going to Kiev tomorrow, that doesn't exist. NATO, all that stuff is important. How big the military is, that's important, but there's nothing more important to me right now than trying to get these kids back. And learn from 2014. Whatever we did in 2014 did not work. They invaded Ukraine, and it was a pathetic attempt to deter future aggression. At every turn, we had a chance to prevent this invasion. Pre-invasion sanctions, too provocative. Give Ukraine something other than goggles and blankets, too provocative. We are where we are, and my goal is to end this war honorably and justly to the extent that you can, and mainly to make sure this doesn't happen again, that Russia will not be allowed to invade a third time, because they'll be taking on security guarantees that are incredibly robust, that would include us and European allies that to be actually fighting more than the Ukrainian army. And I hope to make the Ukrainian army very strong. It's already very strong, but keep it strong. I didn't come here to talk about how to end the war, what you can accept or what you can't. I came here to tell the world we can't end this war until the children are accounted for. Whether everybody gets prosecuted or not, very seldom does that happen in any war. But it is unconscionable to end this war without the world trying to get these kids back. Thank you all.